I just got stuff sorted real quick. Right. I don't just have to see when people start coming in. We'll see that when we get there, and good thing I checked. My gain wasn't up yet. There we go. Good day to you. That first part might be a bit quiet. And we're gonna have to see how long this will be. It's currently 1 AM here, so I'm probably keeping it to 2, 3, maybe 4 hours. But I think 4 hours will be about my hard max for this stream. Because I have tomorrow off, but that doesn't mean I can suddenly mess up my sleep schedule that much. It'll be a short night for me, and maybe not too short a night. I might be up late tomorrow night as well, for different reasons. Might be up later as well, so it might not be too bad to make it a somewhat alright long night. Well, crossing into the day then with sleep, but that's alright sometimes. Gonna have to see who all shows up. Not too sure on that one. Most of my regulars usually are used to me being up or live on way different times, so I'm not expecting too many people. But we'll see, we'll see. Just double checking some things, crossing some T's, dotting some I's. Let me see. I think I'm just gonna continue in the book that I was reading last time. Well, last time, kinda yesterday, Wednesday. The night between Thursday and Friday now, so is it still Thursday or Friday? I don't know, kinda depends. Depends how you look at it. But yeah, I think I'll just continue with what was it again? More bedtime stories by Louis something. The author's name cuts off there. But there were some good stories so far. Someone's a bit more interesting than the others. Some touching some kinda mature subjects for a children's bedtime story, but you know, can't expect though. Can't tell little fox and the rave, and how do you do? Hope you're well. Thank you so much for the raise up. How have you been doing? Been trying to catch your streams, but they've been a bit elusive to me. And again, my work's been busy, so most everything but my work's been elusive to me. Sometimes it just be that way. Let me in the meantime real quick also just skim through the story. See if I kind of like see anything come up that's like, oh no, maybe skip this one. Not really. This one looks good. This one looks good. as well. Children's bedtime stories are nice and all, but it's all from way back, so in those times it was more accepted to, what do you call that? To like beat your child, and I'm glad we've moved past that, but some of the children's bedtime stories may sometimes still involve kind of bit stuff like that. There was one in this collection that was a bit heavy. And Pixel Vegas, thank you for the Prime Gaming stuff. Can't say it wrong, of course. Prime Gaming. Don't often see it say Prime Gaming, but maybe that's in all our chats. I don't know. But thank you so much. Oh, nice. Happy I can be here. And yeah, streaming at a bit weird a time for me, but gonna see who all shows up. Don't get used to me streaming on this time. It's 1 AM. And Fox, thank you so much for gifting us up to 5th. And hey, Fifth, how do you do? Good day to you. Although, to be fair, it is nearing prime time for a night to go to bed, right? Well, for the early birds in Eastern NA like to go to bed-ish. It's still kind of early actually for like Eastern NA. It would be... We are 1 hour closer now, so that's 5 hours. I think they'd be at 8 PM. It's a bit early, but who knows, maybe. And Fox, thank you so much for the gifted sub, the random gifted sub. Or the sub to Comp. The lovely Comp. Oh, probably not, he's gone to bed. He's from EU as well. He might be in chat, but he has like a chat client always open, so he's always there. Oh, a new batch. Nice. Wait, was that? That was the 5 one. What's the 10 one again? 10 is... I'm trying to remember the color, but I can't at all. It's blue. Wow, nice. Well, the Gifter Leader 2 badge actually fits well with your name color in chat, though. And Viv, thank you so much for the berries. Thank you so much. And thank you guys for the hype train. That's a rare occurrence here. Not used to that site. Especially this short in the stream. The train left the station. And we're on it, so... Let's see where the train brings us. I'm actually not sure. Just doing random stuff today, so I'm really not sure. Well, random stuff. I was gonna do some bedtime stories. Not quite random. Just doing talking as always is never really random with me. Not quite. And I think in total actually that it's the 3rd hype train I've ever gotten. I'm pretty sure. I mean, it's not more than that, I don't think. It might be one less. It's either the 2nd or 3rd, but I think the 3rd. I think. Says the man who always says that he's got bad memory, so honestly. Yeah. Maybe don't trust that one. Oh, the St. Patrick's Day modifications are still live. Nice. My emote's a bit a bit small for the hats, for the lucky hats. But a bandana looks cute. And the beard actually kinda fits. And the lucky hat's just floating. Speaking of emotes though, it'll take a bit, but I will be getting some more emotes, or I'll probably replacing these since I only have 5 slots. Yeah, the bandana fits really well. That actually really does. But yeah, I'll probably be replacing the emotes I've currently got. These are like just from a basic set that I just quickly threw together on the site. You still pay quite a bit for, but things. But I've got some things in the works with, well, through a friend of mine. Hello, Voxbear Clips. Hope you're well, hope you're well. I'm good. Just figured I'd get a bit of streaming, bit of reading and before sleep tonight. Or well, bit of reading. Thinking anywhere between 2 and 4 hours. Probably not over that though. 4 hours uptime and be 5 AM here. Can't destroy my sleep schedule completely. Oh, nice Foxbar. Hope you had fun. Hope that was fun. I haven't seen that. It's kind of like the same series as World of Tanks, right? I think. Same-ish, but instead of tanks, it's warships. And thank you guys for the hype stream, by the way. Much love to you. More chilly as playing Warframe or so. I don't know many games, to be honest. Well, I don't know, that's not entirely true, but not really unlike that. Not really unlike that kind of corner of games. I know Warframe a little bit, but not much either. But sounds fun. I like just a game that you can chill in. So, let me get reading the first bedtime story in this collection, or well, the first of the day. Like midway into the collection. Order doesn't really matter. Oh, sorry to hear that, Pixel Vegas. Much love to you. Hope it helps. My lost sister, a confession. And it's from the first person, so I guess I have a confession to make. When I went home from my grandmother's, being set down at the home door by the stage driver, in whose care I had been placed, and found my little sister in my mother's arms, a quick growing hate of her struck its black roots in my heart. I know that it seems unnatural. In most houses the baby is the very light and joy at him, the little idol to whom from the least to the greatest, the whole family do willing homage. But remember that I had grown to be 10 years old, with no rival near the throne, accustomed to be the first object, with my father and mother, parrot indulged as much. The baby as if I had worn white long clothes. 'Twas not strange that it should come hard to be deposed from my throne of babyhood in one moment. When I went into the house, Nurse Sykes met me with a smile, which struck me like a blow. "Somebody's got their nose broke, I guess," she said, with a tantalizing laugh. Before this, no one had spoken to me about a newcomer, and there, I think, was where the wrong began. But a woman's meaning flashed into my mind in a moment, and I tossed my head scornfully, without speaking. Nurse Sykes was probably not an ill-natured woman. She could not have been, since no face was so welcome as hers in the sick rooms of all the neighbourhood. But she was a very injudicious one. I suppose my idle feigned contempt and indignation amused her, and so she went on provoking me. "Ho, ho, Miss Finers, doesn't want to see your baby sister, don't she? Well, to tell the truth, I don't think you'll be much missed. Papa and Mama are pretty well wrapped up in Miss Baby. She's a novelty, you know, and I guess she'll be taken care of, even if you don't trouble yourself." I would not for worlds have let her see the passion of grief and rage which shook me. I went out of her sight and fled, not to my own room, which opened from my mother's, but to a remote spare chamber, and there I bore my pain alone. To cry would have infinitely relieved me, but my evil pride restrained me from that I should not see my eyes red, and know how I felt. I would die first, I said, bitterly to myself. I who had cried out every sorrow of my life hitherto on my mother's tender bosom, after a while I heard him calling me. "Annie, Annie, Annie, why the child came in half an hour ago, where is she?" Then I knew I must go down, so I looked at myself in the glass, and saw a face in which, indeed, no tear stained, but which was disfigured by pride and passion, and thinking to myself, "No one will notice how I look now," I went into my mother's room. "Come here, my darling," her gentle voice said. "Come and look at my baby." Baby, could she not say a fond word to me? I'd been away from home 2 weeks without bringing in baby. I moved reluctantly toward her. "Baby is 12 days old," she went on, wistfully, seeing my sullen mien. "I wouldn't let anyone tell you, for I thought it would be such a surprise." "A surprise indeed," I echoed her word with a scorn in my voice, which must have pained that gentle heart sorely. "Isn't she sweet?" And, still trying to win my love for a new treasure, Mamma uncovered the little, dimpled rosy face and held it toward me. "I suppose so. I don't think I care for babies," I said ungraciously. "But you do care for Mamma, and you haven't so much as kissed me yet, my darling." Perhaps if, even then, She could have put her arms around me and held me fast against her loving heart, as she used to when I was grieved or naughty. It might have driven away the evil spirit and made me her own child again, but she could not, for there in her lap was baby. So I took her kiss passively, returned it coldly, and then went away. It seemed so incredible to my grown-up self, looking back upon it, that I could have gone on hating my baby sister more and more, that I can scarcely expect you to believe it, and I think I would hardly write out this, my confession, that I not hope it might lead some other, tempted as I was, to examine her heart in time, and root out from it the evil weed of jealousy, which bears always such bitter fruit. From the first, little Lilias, or Lily, as they all call her, was a singularly lovely child. As a baby, she cried very little, and never in anger. Nothing but real pain ever made the red lips quiver, or filled the violet eyes with tears. She never could see any face more grave than usual without trying, in her baby fashion to brighten it. I can remember, how distinctly times my father would come home, worn and tired, and she would, quite untold, go through a little roll of accomplishments, till she won a smile from him, clapping her fairy hands and nodding her gleaming, golden hat showing her 2 small teeth, or a little winning vow she had. She was a very frail, delicate child, and she did not walk nearly as early as other children, but she talked very soon indeed. She was scarcely 10 months old when she learned to call us all by our names, and strangely enough mine was the first name she spoke. Nan, 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 she would call me, half of the day, like a little silver-voiced parrot. She was very fond of me in a certain way. I never thought, and never tended her unless I was obliged, and my mother, noticing with deep grief my spirit toward my little sister, waited for the evil feeling to wear itself out, and seldom called on me to amuse a child, or to give up for her sake any whim or fancy of my own. Lily was not used, therefore, to have me hold or play with her. Oh, that's nice to hear, Fox. That you're doing better. Perhaps she thought I could not, but it seemed to afford her infinite satisfaction just to have me in her sight. It may be she left in some vague way that I was nearer babyhood than the rest, and so more of her kind. At any rate, she always seemed perfectly happy, and content when she could watch me. At any of my pursuits and when I left the room, her little silvery foil would call after me, Nan, Nan, Nan. She was a full year and a half old before she began to walk, and then she was so small and delicate that she looked as I might fancy a baby out of fairyland would look, flitting around on the tiniest of feet, her yellow hair glinting goldenly in every chance sunbeam, and her wistful blue eyes as a blue flower. How could I help loving her, eh? How could I? I fancy I must have loved her a little even then, only I'd grown so in the habit of regarding her as an interloper, a rival, an alien, who was taking from me all which had formerly been mine, that I never owned even in the silence of my own heart to any softening toward her. Father and mother were good to me beyond my deserts, and beyond my poor words to describe. I have known since with what infinite love and grief they sorrowed over me, while waiting for his evil growth in my heart to be uprooted, as they felt sure it would be some time. They had the wisdom to know that reproof would be vain, and simply to love me and be silent. But if they loved me, and were to me most patient and kind, they were devoted to little Lily, as was natural. She was so frail and so fair, so needed their constant watchfulness, that it is not strange she had it. One day, when she was 2 years old and I was 12, I sat in a corner of the sitting room, putting a dissected map together. While a lady was calling upon my mother. She looked earnestly and long at Lily, but it was not uncommon. The child's dainty beauty was a pleasant thing to watch. At last, after she had risen to go, she sat as if she couldn't help saying, Take good care of the little one, Miss Helen. She looks to me like one of the children the angels love. I saw the quick dew suffuse my mother's eyes as she made some answer which I filled the air, and then went to the door with her guest. Am I to tell the sad and bitter truth? I understood as well as they did, that they thought her Lily so frail we should have hard work to make her flourish in the cold soil of the earth, and for one moment a feeling of evil triumph swelled in my heart. When she was gone, I should be all to my father and mother, as I used to be before she came. They would love me when they had no one else to love. Hello, cheeky goblin, how do you do? You're well. Let me quickly. For anyone that's not visited that link yet before, go visit it and click that follow button. I felt a guilty flush mounting to my cheeks, and I swept my map into its box hastily and got up to leave the room. As I went out of the door, Lily's voice followed me, sweetly shrill, nan, 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 and for the very first time in my life, a conviction smote me that there would be a sense of loss when that voice could never follow me again, with its soft calling through all the years. Ah, thank you, cheeky, thank you so much. Try not to blush over it. The next summer was a strange, warm, oppressive summer, the summer of '56. With its July heats, our Lily began to droop. Such care as she had, such nursing, such love. But she had been always like a blossom from heaven, sprung up by mistake in the rough soil of this world, and she needed for her healing the wind which blows forever through the leaves of the tree of life. And cheeky goblin, thank you so much for 100 biddies. Thank you so much. Glad you like it. I think I see a common thread in the last couple of books or short stories by this author. This is a collection of bedtime stories, but I can kind of guess where this one's going as well. I guess the author was meaning for you to cry yourself to sleep. Just like another one yesterday got quite emotional as well. But I'll see. Not crying myself to sleep for another hour or 3 though, so. Oh, that's alright. See ya. Take care, cheeky goblin. I upload some other VoDs to YouTube as well, so can pick out any book you like. Yeah, glad to hear you like it. Hope it works for sleeping. I don't know. I don't recommend any of the H.P. Lovecraft books for sleeping. I've read a couple. Those might not be great for dreams. If you check out the VoDs, maybe he does. And she soon grew so weak that she could not run about any more, but would lie all day, except when, for a change, my mother held her in her arms, in a little rose-curtained crib, out from which the blue, wistful eyes followed all her movements with a sweet, loving, lingering look, which I cannot describe. On me in especial, that long gaze used to rest, and never could I leave the room without that sweet, small voice calling after me plaintively. There came a day at last when the doctor sat half an hour by Lily's side, watching her with grave, silent face, and then went into another room alone with my mother. He came out first and went away, and when she followed him, her eyes were very red. I knew afterwards, what I suspected the moment I saw her face, that he had been telling her that she must make up her mind to part with her little darling. Alright, Viv, take care at work. Have a lovely, lovely day at work. See you later. And no worries, hope you enjoy it. My heart was not quite stone after all, for it grew strangely soft and strangely afraid then. She was going home to God, this little lily of heaven. How would she tell him that I had hated all through the baby sister he had given me? I went away by myself and prayed. I had said my prayers night and morning all my life, but this was quite another thing. This cry of the child's heart becoming conscious of its guilt and woe through the pitying father. At last I went to my mother. Lily was asleep, and Mamma sat by her side, pale as death. But with face that made no complaint, I knelt down beside her. Oh, Mother, I cried, I've been so wicked, and now I cannot undo it. Oh, if I could, oh, if I could only die, who am not fit to live, and let you keep Lily. She bent over me and drew me into her arms against her bosom. If you are not fit to live, my darling, you are not fit to die, she said gently. I can better part with Lily, for she is pure yet, as when God gave her to me. I have seen your sin and your suffering, and I have known your repentance would come. Oh, it has, mother. How can I bear it? Will she go home to God and tell him I have hated her? Do you think she could tell him anything which he does not know? But Lily has never found out what hate means. She has always loved you, and she does not know, but that all the world loves her. The pain which her sin has caused has not rested on Lily. Thank God for that. But I might have made her happier. I might have been good to her. And now, perhaps, I shall never have any little sister any more in all the world. Just then, the child awoke and put out her frail little hands with a low, sweet call that was destined to listen for in vain through all the empty after years. I ran to her and took her in my arms. She saw the tears upon my face and touched them with her mighty fingers. Naughty Nan, she said in fond reproach, naughty Nan to cry, make Lily cry too. And then I wiped away my tears and tried to be cheerful, but oh, how heavy my heart was. And mourn as I would, I could not bring back the dead months and days wherein I might have loved my little sister, and had hated her instead. What else? Nothing but that. With a fading summer flower she too faded and died. In her case was wrought no miracle of healing. We all do fade as a leaf, but she had never been a strong green leaf tossed by the summer winds, freshened by summer rains, gay in summer sunshine. Just a pale, sweet daylily that lived her little life and died with the sunset. And the first words she ever spoke were the last words also. She opened her tender eyes after a long silence, during which she had scarcely seemed to breathe, and they rested on me. Nan, 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 she cried, as if it were a call to follow her into the strange new life, the strange new world, whither a moment after she was gone. If there has been any good to my life since then, if I have striven at all to be tender and gentle and unselfish, let me offer such struggles as a tribute to her memory, as one lays flowers upon an altar or a grave. Whether she has gone, I pray God to guide my feet also, in his own good time and way, and I shall know that I have reached the place whither my longing stands when I hear, soft falling through the eternal air, her low, sweet call. Nan, 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 welcome, Nan. And well, my suspicions may have been right. Maybe this author is going for people that cry themselves asleep with the bedtime stories. Keeping it dry though, keeping it dry. More stories to come. Let me just quickly adjust my chair and stuff a bit though. Hold on, one sec. Or well, more. I sat back and sat a bit lower, going into lazy mode. It's getting late, alright. Alright, let me go on to read Uncle Jack. What young bears most boys are, said my Uncle Jack, watching his oldest hope pushing his sister in the swing so vigorously that she almost fell out, and then pulling one side of the rope at a time, making her fairly dizzy, with swaying from side to side, while she alternately screamed and entreated. "Oh, nice to hear, Milk Garden Girl, nice. I'm glad they're helping. That's good to hear. And well, hope you're doing well. How are you doing? And nice to see you." And well, if you're in the US, you might not have to check out a VoD this time around. Depending on how long I'm streaming, it'll take a bit before the US reaches bedtime. Oh well. Thank you for watching them, and glad you're enjoying them, and glad they're helping. Hope you've been sleeping well. It's nice to hear. Just about the same, all of them, Uncle Jack went on. Talk about boyish chivalry. I never found it, especially toward a boy's own kith and kin. There may be some Highland marries with juvenile adorers, but 9 times out of 10, a boy would rather frighten a girl than kiss her. My John there's just a specimen. Come here, sir. Raising his voice, do you want to hear a story about the days when I was just such another cop as yourself? Sounded like maybe we're gonna get dating advice from Uncle Jack in this short story. Yeah, have a nice lurk, by the way. Take care. This suggestion brought John and his sister both in from the swing, when Uncle Jack began to spin a yarn, as he often called it, or a family was sure to want to be present at its unravelling. And he talks a lot, so maybe let me keep it in the middle, but do with some reverb. How about that? You see, he began, my sister Nellie wasn't my sister at all, but it was all the same, as far as my feeling for her went. When I was only 3 years old, my mother's best friend died, and left Nellie a little, wailing 2-month-old baby, to my mother's scare. Her father had been killed before she was born, in a railroad accident, so there was no one but my mother to see her, and she brought the little thing home and adopted her. Thankfully enough, for those yet 4 good stout boys, of whom I was the youngest. There was never a girl in the family till Nellie came. We all loved her as she grew older. She was a pretty little blossom, as you would want to see, with her black eyes and the crisp black hair falling about her rosy cheeks. She had a funny little rosebud of a mouth, too, and a daintiest little figure, well made all through, and no mistake about it. I think I loved her, if anything, better than the rest did, considering that she was nearer my age, and so we were more continually together. But bless ya, there wasn't any chivalry in it. It didn't keep me from painting her doll's face black, or hiding its shoes, or from listening when she was talking with her girl cronies, and then bursting out among them, and yelling their choicest secret to the 4 winds. I would have knocked any boy down from the time I was big enough to use my fists, who had said a saucy word to Nellie, but I said plenty of them myself. I believe I like to tease her for the sake of hearing her beg me not to, just as I've seen you tease your sister 100 times, Master John. You would think she would have hated me, but that's one curious thing about girls and women. They don't always hate or you would naturally expect them to. And Nellie cared a good deal more about me than I deserved. She seemed to be proud of me, because I was a great, strong, roistering fellow, and she never bore malice for any of the tricks I served her. I have wondered many a time since how I could have had the heart to torment her, for she never once tried to revenge herself on me, nor can I recollect her ever being angry with me. When I got myself into disgrace with parents or teachers, 'twas always her gentle voice which pleaded for me, and hard enough folks found it to say no to her, where was the dark eyes and bright cheeks, or a little winning, coaxing way she had. And hello there, Peter Vita. Hope you're well, and thank you for keeping me hydrated. Oh, thank you. And thank you for the follow. Good idea though, yeah, staying hydrated. When I was 14 and Nellie was 11, we went one day to a huckleberry picnic. We had great fun all the afternoon and stayed a good deal later than we meant to, so that it was almost dark when we started to go home. We had 2 miles to walk, and the first half of the distance our way lay with the rest of the company. I had got it well stirred up by the general merriment, and wasn't half satisfied with the frolic ending there. Nellie, I remembered afterwards, was very quiet and seemed tired. She was a delicate little thing anyway, and got worn out with fatigue or excitement a good deal sooner than most of her mates. Finally, our road turned off, away from the rest, and led through a long pine wood. As we went on under the thick trees, it grew darker and darker, and Nellie curled up closer to my side. You'd have thought that at 14 I was old enough for chivalry and that sort of thing, if I was ever going to be, but not a bit of it. I was just a great, strong, rollicking boy, with some heart to be sure, but liking fun better than anything, and headstrong and inconsiderate to an extent which I'm ashamed to remember, full still of unexhausted animal spirits, and, as I said, not half satisfied with the frolic I had had. I began indeed of other amusement to tease Nellie. I told her a ghastly story or two, and then I would rush away from her among the thick trees, as if in pursuit of something, and came back again to her side in a few minutes. I wanted her to scream after me, but she didn't. She was so still that I actually thought she didn't care. And after a while I grew vexed, because I couldn't vex her, and make her implore me to stay with her, and confess her dependence upon me. At last, when we were about a third of a mile from home, a path led through the woods, branching off from that main path on which we were, to the farm where my greatest crony lived. I thought of something I wanted to say to him. Here was a chance to tease Nellie well, let her see whether she was just as comfortable without me as with me. You look at me as if you didn't believe I could have been such a brood, but I was, and what is more, I did not at all realize at the time that I was doing any harm, that Nellie would have a little scare and hurry home somewhat faster than usual. Was the most I apprehended, so I said, with a sort of boyish swagger, if it just occurs to me that there's something I want to say to all summer, and we are so near home now that you won't be afraid, so I'll just branch off there. Tell mother I had supper enough at a picnic, and she needn't wait for me. It was too dark to look at Nelly, or perhaps her white face, sad and frightened, that I know it must have been, would have turned me from my purpose. She did not speak one word, and I struck off at a tearing pace through the woods. By the time I had reached Hal Somers' place, I began to get sobered down a little, and to feel somewhat uncomfortable about what I had done. I had to wait a few minutes before I could see him, but I did my errand briefly. It was not more than an hour after I had left Nelly before I myself was at home. I found Mother in the porch, looking out anxiously. "I'm so glad you have come, children," she cried, when she heard my footsteps, and then, as I drew nearer, "Why, Jack, where is Nelly?" "Here, I suppose," I answered, trying to face the music boldly. "I left her about an hour ago in the woods, where the path branches off to go to Hal Somers's, and she had nothing to do but to come straight home." "You left Nelly in the woods an hour ago?" my mother cried, in a tone which made my heart stand still, and then turn over with a great leap. And then she sprang by me like some wild creature, and called through the darkness to my father to come with his lantern quick, quick, for Nelly had been alone in the dark woods for an hour. Instantly, as it seemed to me, my father and my oldest brother were following Mother along the woodland path, and I stole after them, feeling like a second Cain. 'Twas but a very few minutes before we came up to Nelly, for there she was, just where I left her. She had sunk to the ground and was half sitting there, her back leaning against the tree beside the path. The light from the lantern flashed on her face, a face white and set as death, but with the wide open eyes glaring fearfully into the dark beyond. "And hello there, Joshua. Hope you're well. Good day to you. But I'm sorry to say I don't speak Spanish, I think. It's either Spanish or Portuguese, and I can never tell the two apart. I speak neither, but there you go." It was my mother who touched her first, and felt to see whether her heart had stopped beating. "Is she dead?" my father asked huskily. "I don't know. It seems to me I can feel the very faintest throb, but I cannot tell until we get her home. If she isn't dead, I'm afraid she is worse, frightened out of her senses forever." Then Father and William made preparations to carry her. I asked timidly if I could help. I think none of them had noticed before that I was there. "You," my father said, with such concentrated scorn and wrath in his voice that I cannot describe, and then Mother said more mildly, but so sadly it was worse than any anger, "No, I trusted her to you once. I suppose you loved her." So I saw her move off, carrying her between them, and I followed after like an outcast, until it occurred to me that, at least, I could call a physician. So I flew by them like the wind, and off on the road to town. By some singular good fortune, if we ought not always to say Providence and never fortune, before I had gone 40 rods, I met Dr. Green, who was coming in our direction to visit a patient. So I had him with me on the door stone when I brought Nelly in. And hey, a tough, thank you, glad you like it. And hello, Pingles. Welcome and thank you for a follow. And thank you as well, and tough love. Much love for you all. I did not dare to go into the room where I carried her, but I waited outside in an agony which punished me already for my sin. At last my mother had pity on me and looked out. She is not dead, Jack, she said, but she is still insensible, and until she is restored to consciousness, there is no telling what her soul will be. Then an awful terror came over me, which I cannot put into words. What if she died, or what if she never had a reason again? Who in that house would ever bear to look at me? When Cain had murdered his brother, he had to go forth alone. What was left for me? Another Cain, but to go also alone in that world. And hello there, always or for always. Hope you're well and thank you for the follow. Good day to you. We lived 9 miles away from a seaport town from which whaling vessels were continually starting, and it came into my mind that I might ship on board one for a 3 years' cruise, and by the time it was over, the folks at home might have learned how to forgive me for being in the world. So off through the night I hurried. How strangely our ways seem made ready for us, often in the great moments, big with fate, of our lives. I found a whaler which was to sail in the early morning, a captain disappointed in one of his green hands, whose place I could have. And before I had been half an hour in the town, my bargain was made. I had been fitted out with necessaries, and went into a tavern to write a note to my mother. A strange and queer note it was, but I told her where I was gone and why, and begged her whenever came to forgive her boy, who loved her and who might never see her again. Never mind about the long days and weeks and months which followed, the empty hours of solemn nights and gusty days, during which I was face to face with my own soul. Of course, before a week had gone by, I was sorry enough for the rash step I had taken. It seemed to me I could not live for 3 years and not know what had become of Nelly. I would have gone barefoot to the ends of the earth to find out about her, but I could not walk the sea. I was growing so wild with grief and anxiety that I sometimes think I should have walked overboard some night, and so ended all my pain for this world, if Providence had not raised me up a friend in my need. Only a common sailor and a man whose strange history I never knew, but a gentleman and a scholar, in whose locker were Milton and Shakespeare and Don Quixote. I had studied pretty well at school. I was rather forward than otherwise for a boy of 14, and I have sometimes thought no course of study in any school would have been so much to me. There was the entire absence of frivolous and worthless literature, and the constant companionship of these great minds. Besides these, I read daily my pocket testament, and I owed a great deal also to the instructions and explanations of the friend who was, as it always seemed to me, God's a special gift to my needs. Our voyage appeared destined at first to be a highly successful one, but just as we were nearly ready to return, we encountered a storm which threw the sea with wrecks. We saw our vessel go down, but we were fortunate enough to escape in our boat, my friend and I, and 2 or 3 more were with the second mate in his boat, and we were soon separated from the others. We made land on a fruitful island, peopled by savages who were not unfriendly, but it was many months before at last we got away in an East Indiaman. And while we were on the island, my friend had died suddenly, leaving untold the story of his life. I will not enter into the particulars of my return home, how from port to port and ship to ship I made my way, until at length, after 5 years of absence, I sighted the well-known landmarks of the old town from whence I embarked. And hello there, Joshua, or still, nice emoji I got there. How familiar it all looked to me. I knew every field through which the homeward road led, and I walked the 9 miles between the town and my father's farm in the night, as I had done before. It was 3 o'clock of a September morning when I reached the old place, and I had nearly 2 hours to wait before there were any signs of life about it. For now, after all these years, I had not the courage to summon them from their rest. How I passed those waiting hours, divided betwixt hope and fear, you can guess. I lived over in them all the torturing anxieties of the last 5 years. Was Nelly dead or alive? Should I ever see my mother again? Or had changed all the old house among the trees that stood so still? At last I heard a sound. A door opened and my mother, who of old always used to be the first to move, looked out. Her hair was white and her thin cheeks were pale, but I knew her kind eyes had looked forth to meet the morning, and should have known them despite any amount of change. I sprang forward to greet her. "Mother," I said. She knew my voice and turned toward me trembling. "Oh, Jack, Jack, I thought that you were dead long ago. Oh, my boy, my own boy." And her arms were around my neck, her tender lips were kissing me, and so she drew me in, into peace, shelter, home. "And Nelly?" I asked, half afraid to call her name. "Nelly is well, oh, if you had but waited to see. She was ill for a while, but no serious harm came to her, and instead it was my own boy who went away to break my heart. And has come back to heal it," I cried, growing bold and merry with my relief and joy. By this time the rest of us heard us and came to the scene, father and brothers, and last of all, Nelly, such a beautiful Nelly, of sweet 16, 10 times fairer and brighter than my brightest memories of her, and all ready to forgive me and make much of me. Then was when the chivalry began. Then I was ready enough to fetch and carry for Miss Nelly of the dark eyes and the bright cheeks. "Oh," said John, laughing, "then when a fellow is 19, he can be chivalrous to his own sister." "Very likely he can," Uncle Jack answered, "but my experience doesn't prove it, for I began to be glad very soon indeed that Nelly was only my adopted sister after all. It was a good while before I got my courage up to ask her whether she would trust herself to me on the long home stretch through life. Be sure that I promised her, if she would, that I'd never leave her in any dark places. And what did she say? Oh, I mustn't tell her secrets. Go and ask her, there she comes, with her third grandchild in her arms. Her cheeks are not bright now, she says, but somehow they look to me, just as they used to look, and I know her eyes are as dark and deep as ever. And though I call her mother with the rest of you, when you are all around, there is never a night that I don't say to her before she goes to sleep, God bless you, Nelly. And there we go, that's actually a very sweet story for once. Oh, let me see. I was gonna say, I saw someone go live there. The lovely gentle fox's life. That's nice about me staying up. Maybe I'll keep today short then, so I can read him in like an hour or so. That'd be nice. I can watch him for 30 minutes and then I'll head off to bed myself, probably. Hello, Jugaton. Hope you're well, and thank you for the follow. Good day to you. Let me see, in between stories, fill up my glass with water real quick. There we go. I got a bit. And then move on to the next short story in this bedtime story collection. Nobody's Child. The summer sun was warm in the 5-acre lot, and the east porch was cool and pleasant, so the owner of the lot lingered in the porch and talked a while with his wife. He had married her only the April before, had to live with her and love her, had not yet grown to be an old story. It would be her fault if it ever did grow to be one, for he was a tender, kindly man, this Marcus Grant, with a gentle and clinging nature, and a womanly need of loving. His wife, though she was young and pretty, with bright eyes and bright lips and soft waving hair, was harder than he and colder and more selfish, but she had given him all the heart she had, and in these early days she cared very much indeed about pleasing him and keeping him satisfied with her, or rather, making him continue to admire her, for a quiet satisfaction on his part would not have been enough. He had thrown himself down on the door stone, and his head was leaning against her lap, as she sat on her low chair in the porch, and ran her fingers in and out of his thick chestnut hair, thinking to herself what a fortunate woman she was to be the wife of this manly, handsome fellow, whom so many girls wanted, and the mistress of his well-filled, comfortable house. From this east porch where they sat, they could see down the long line of dusty road that led to the church and the few houses clustered around it, which passed for a village. The farmhouse stood on the top of a hill, and up this hill right now saw a woman toiling slowly. The summer sun burned fiercely down on her, the dust rose with every step, and a choking cloud about her, but still she struggled on. The rowy fens are full of interest in country solitudes, and both the Grant and his wife watched the wanderer with curiosity. "Well, I never saw her before, that's certain," the husband said, after a long look as she drew nearer. "Nor I," returned his wife. "But see, Mark, she has a baby in her arms. She's trying to keep the son of it, for it shall, and sure as shall live. She is turning in here." "Why, so she is," and Grant rose to his feet. "May I sit down in the shade and rest?" asked the stranger, drawing nigh. She spoke in a clear, silvery voice, which betrayed some of her secrets, since it was the voice of the lady, and also it was the utterance of despair, for its hopeless monotone was unvarying. "Oh, but certainly," and Mrs. Grant rose and offered her own low chair, for clearly this was no common tramp. "And I might trouble you for a glass of water." "I'll go for some fresh," Grant said, full of hospitable intent. But before he got back with a water, he heard his wife calling him, and hurrying forward at the sound, he found her holding the stranger's head on her shoulder, and the baby was just opening sleepy eyes in her arms. "Quick, Mark, do something. I think she's dying. She must be sunstruck." And so it proved. No one ever knew how far she had toiled in that intense heat, with a baby in her arms. No one ever knew anything more about her, for when the sun set, which had scorched and withered her life, she too was gone to unknown shores. She spoke only once, after she asked for a glass of water, and it was just before she died. The baby in another room uttered a cry, and she tried to turn her head toward the sound. It's your baby," Mrs. Grant said kindly, "but she is all right. What do you call her?" The strangest change came over her dying face. It may have been only a foreshadowing of death, but it seemed more like a mortal agony of renunciation and despair. "Nothing," she said, as evenly and with as little change of inflection as if she were already a ghost. "Nothing. She is nobody's child." But in half an hour after that she was dead, and Mrs. Grant, who was very literal in her ideas, always thought that the stranger had not known what she said, but she used to add the child was nobody's child, for all they should ever know about it. After the mother was buried, she began to think it was time to dispose of this child, which was nobody's. She was not without her heart, and she had worked diligently to fashion small garments enough to make the little creature comfortable, but now she thought her duty was done, and she wondered Mark said nothing about taking the baby to the almshouse. At last one evening she herself proposed it. Her husband looked at her in mild surprise. He supposed all women loved babies by instinct, and he took it for granted that of course his wife wanted this one. Only she probably thought he wouldn't like it around. "Why did you think I wouldn't let you keep it?" he asked quietly. "I think God has sent it to us, and we've really no right to turn it over to anyone else, to say nothing of the pleasure it is to have the little bundle." As I said, Mrs. Grant was still in a state of mind not to be satisfied without her husband's admiration. She would not have fallen short of his ideal of her for anything, She would at least see more that he desired her to be. She was quick enough to understand that he would think less of her if he saw her unwilling to keep the baby, so she smiled on him with what cheerfulness she could summon and treated the matter settled. Thus the child, which was nobody's, grew up in the grand household. She had been 6 months old. Apparently, when she came there, and by midwinter she began to toddle around on her little feet and to say short words. But no one ever thought her to say papa or mama, those lovely first words of childhood. What had nobody's child to do with such names? It might have seemed strange to most people that Julia Grant did not love this little thing, so thrown upon her mercy in its tender babyhood. But despite theories, all women are not fond of children. Every woman is perhaps fond, in a blind instinctive way of her own, but the more heavenly love which takes all children in its arms and blesses them is not by any means universal. The most powerful trait in Mrs. Grant's character was a silent and obtrusive selfishness. The whole world resolved to her thought, about her. Rains fell, dews dropped earthward, winds blew and sun shone for Julia Grant. She had consented with secret reluctance to keep the child, and from that moment a root of bitterness and jealousy had sprung up in her heart. If her husband had thought much of her comfort, she used to say to herself, he would not have wanted to put all this care upon her. She was quite ready, therefore, to be jealous, and to feel as if something was taken from her every time he tossed the little one in his arms, or called it a pet name, and after a while, not at once, for he was naturally the most unsuspicious of men. Some instinct revealed this to him, and made him, lover of peace as he was, very chary of manifesting in his wife's presence any special tenderness for the little stranger within his gates. But summer and winter came and went, and with their sun and shade, nobody's child grew on towards a girlhood. She had a great deal of beauty, of a shadowy, delicate kind. She was seldom ill, but she was a very frail-looking child. The quick, changeful colour in her cheeks, the depth of feeling in her dark eyes, the tremulous curves about her mouth, all indicated an organisation of extreme sensitiveness, a nature to which love would be as the very breath of life, but which was too shrinking and timid ever to put forth any claims for it, or make any advances. For 10 years she was the only little one in the grand household. Their affairs prospered. They grew richer every year, as if nobody's child had brought a blessing with her. But was a constant source of bitterness to Mrs. Grant that they were laying up for strangers, or perhaps for this waif, whom no one else claimed, and who seemed likely to remain in their house forever, like some noiseless and welcome shadow. But at last, when the child had been for 10 years her unwelcome housemaid, to Mrs. Grant herself was given a little baby girl. God's messenger of love, as I think every child must be, to every mother. Never had baby a warmer welcome. The preparations made for her were worthy of a little queen, and she opened her eyes on a world of love and of summer. But perhaps no one, not even her mother, lavished upon her such a passion of devotion as the poor little waif. Nobody's child who had never in her life before had anyone whom she dared to caress. Perhaps her devotion to baby touched Mrs. Grant's heart. At any rate, she saw that she could trust the little one to her without fear, and so nobody's child became a self-constituted but most faithful nurse and bodyguard to this other child, whom loving hearts were so proud and glad to own. And little Rose, for so they named the summer baby, clung to her young nurse with a fond tenacity, very exacting and wearing indeed, but unutterably sweet to the shy girl, whom no one else loved. She began to feel that she was of some use. Even she had her own name and place in the world, and this reminds me that I have not yet told you her name. She had been christened Annette soon after she came under the grand roof, but little Rose called her Nancy, and this little title was the very first word that small person ever spoke. She was a lovely baby, one of the rosy, fat, dimpled, laughing kind, and so thoroughly healthy that she seldom cried, except when Nancy disappeared for a moment from her sight. The touch of her baby finger seemed to make Marcus Grant and his wife both young again. Day by day some line of care faded out of their faces, which time had begun to harden. The mother smiled as she had never smiled before on her baby, and here at last was an object on which the father's great loving heart could lavish itself unblamed and unquestioned. Hold on, let me just readjust my posture in my chair. I'll put my mic up a little bit. There we go. Rose was half a year and a half old, when one cold winter night her father and mother were persuaded to go to a housewarming a mile away. Mrs. Grant was seldom willing to leave her baby, but this gay company was to assemble at a new house of one of her best friends, and she took a fancy to be present. Nancy will be just as careful as Rose to do justice as I should, she said, and I think it's only neighbourly to go. Her husband, always sociable in his nature, assented readily enough, and 8 o'clock saw him well tucked in under the buffalo robes of their sleigh, and started for the scene festivities. Nancy, for her part, was well content. Rose was already asleep, her little cheek pink as the heart of one of her namesake flowers, resting on one dimpled hand, while the other was tossed above her head, as we have all seen babies sleep. The maid of all work went off early to her bed in the next chamber, and the man, who had a family of his own not far away, took his departure. And then Nancy raked up the fire and crept softly into bed beside little Rose. It was nearly midnight when she woke, roused from her slumber by a light, a vivid red light, brighter than day. In the moment moment she realized her position, the house was on fire and the flames were already far advanced. She sprang to the door and opened it, but was only to be met and driven back by a sheen of fire. There was no hope of escape that way. Rose was her only thought. If she could save the child, she did not care for herself. She opened the chamber window. The leap seemed desperate to her timid gaze, but the snow underneath the window might break the fall. Then she thought of something better. She caught the blankets from the bed and rolled the Rose in them hurriedly, then dragged off the feather bed by an effort of uttermost strength and forced it through the window. And then, reaching out as far as she could, she dropped the Rose closely wrapped in the blankets upon the bed and sprang herself from another window that she might fall upon the child. For her there was no bed underneath and no wrapping of soft woolens. Heavily she fell to the ground, and a violent shock, followed by deadly pain, told her that she had broken her arm. She thanked God in that breathless moment that it was not her leg, for somehow she must move Rose to a place of safety, out of reach at least of falling timbers. How she did it she never could have told, but in 30 seconds Rose and the bed were out of the yard and across the street, and then she sank down beside her charge, utterly unconscious. Mr. and Mrs. Grant were driving home after the festival when they caught a gleam of a wild, strange light in the direction of their own house. "The house is on fire," Mrs. Grant cried with white lips. "Rose," the father answered hoarsely, and whipped his horse into a run. A quarter of a mile away from home they met the maid. "Master, mistress," she screamed after them, "the house is on fire and I'm going for help." They did not stop for questions. Had Nancy also forsaken little Rose? But they found Nancy at her post, though at first they thought she was dead. The mother pulled away the blankets from the little bundle beside her, and baby Rose rubbed her chubby hands into her sleepy eyes. "What is I?" she said. "And what for you make morning so soon?" Oh Mark, she's all right," the mother cried in a passion of joy. "Nancy has saved her." And then she bent over the little girl in her thin nightgown and took her by the arm. Nancy. She had seized the broken arm, and the pain roused the fainting girl. "Yes, she said, starting up. "I'm so sorry to be good for nothing just now when you want me so much, but I broke my arm jumping out." Afterwards, when the family had found a new shelter, the whole story came out. The maid Judith had read herself to sleep, and her candle had tipped over and set the bed on fire. The flames had aroused her to a terror which utterly swept away whatever presence of mind she might have had under other circumstances. And without one thought for Rose or Nancy, she had hurried off to call the neighbours to the scene of action. One might have feared that the fright and exposure would prove fatal to one so frail and delicate as Nancy had always been, but by the time her arm was well healed she was stronger than ever before, drawing new life, as it seemed, from the love and care lavished on her so freely. From now, even, Mrs. Grant's heart had opened and taken her in. One day Marcus Grant said to his wife, "But for Nancy we should have had no child at all. It seems hard that she, who saved her darling, should be nobody's child herself." we ought to adopt her and make her ours legally," his wife answered, smiling cheerfully. "I have been thinking the same thing myself. We will do her when you please, for I believe God sent her to us to be our own, just as much as ever he sent Rose." And so it came about, before another spring, that Nandy was no longer nobody's child. Father, mother, and little sister all belonged to her now, and she had name and place in life, her happy home where love smiled forever. Alright, hold on. Let me take a quick breather. I think I'll do one more story. I'm actually getting really sleeping myself. It is nearing 3 AM though, so fair enough. I guess I'm not going to bed that late tonight. Wasn't quite sure what I'd be doing, but yeah, just a short stream I think. Probably 2 hours after one more story. 2 hours-ish. Quite a bad time. After it's been bedtime for a U, but before it's bedtime for an A. But oh well. Hope you're all enjoying nonetheless. And let me jump into My Little Gentleman. For a year the great house rising on the summit of Prospect Hill had been an object of interest and observation, and a chief subject for talk to the quiet country neighbourhood surrounding it. Hillsdale was an old town, a still, steady-going farming place, where a young man ploughed the unwilling fields and coaxed reluctant crops out of the hard-hearted New England soil, as fathers and grandfathers had done before them. But in all the generations since the town was settled, no one had ever thought of building on Prospect Hill. It had been used as pasture ground until now, where a man from Boston had bought it, and it had a road made to its top, had a house built on its very brow. This house was a wonder of architectural beauty, with its battlements high in the hush of the air, and the turrets thereon. It was built of a kind of mixed stone, so that its variegated colouring had an air of brightness and gaiety very unusual. The farmers about were exercised in mind over the amount of ox flesh and patience required to direct stone enough for the great building up the high hill. But I did not trouble the architect, who gave his orders composedly and went on with his business, quite unhearing comment. The house itself puzzled the neighbours with its superb arched dining hall, its lovely frescoed drawing room, its wide passages, its little music room, and its great library all lined with carven oak. Then why there should be so many chambers, unless, indeed, Mr. Shaftesbury had a very large family. But it was when the furniture began to come in that the wonder reached its height. Such plenishings had never been seen before in Hillsdale. The carpet on the drawing room must have been woven in some loom of unheard of size, for it seemed to be all in one piece, with a medallion in the centre, a border around the edge, and all over its soft velvet, into which your feet sank as into woodland moss. The daintiest flowers that ever grew, marble statues gleamed in front at the great mirrors, and pictures of lovely landscapes, and radiant sunsets, and handsome men and fair women, hung upon the walls. In the music room were placed a grand piano, a harp and a guitar. The shelves which ran around the library on all sides, halfway from floor to ceiling, were filled with substantially bound books, and above them were busts of great men by whom immortal words had been written. 'Twas a dream of beauty all through, and when it was finished, and a troop of servants, men and women, came to make all things ready, expectation reached its height. A presidential progress could hardly have excited more interest than the arrival of a quiet, gentlemanly-looking man, dressed in grey, with iron-grey hair and beard, at the little railroad station where a carriage had been sent down from Prospect Hill to meet him. This, of course, was Mr. Shaftesbury. He was accompanied in spite of the many chambers by a family of only two, a lady much younger than himself, dressed with elegant simplicity, with a face full of all womanly sweetness, and a boy about 12 or 13, apparently, a high-bred little fellow in his appearance, but somewhat pale and delicate, and in need of the bracing air of Prospect Hill. They drove home in the sunset, this little family of three, and looked for the first time on their new abode. Mr. Shaftesbury had selected the location and bought the land somewhat more than a year before, and then had put the whole matter into the hands of a competent architect, while he took his family to Europe, so that the new residence had as entirely the charm of novelty for him as for the others. For a month after that he was to be seen busily superintending matters about his place in the forenoon, while his wife and boy sauntered along, never far away from him, or driving with them in the pleasant May afternoons, always these three only, and always together. The 1st of June, the summer term of the district school began. It was an intense surprise to the scholars to find, first of all in his place, young Shaftesbury from the hill. Robert Shaftesbury, 13 years old, he replied to the teacher, who asked his name and age. He studied quietly till recess, and even then lingered in his seat with evident shyness, though he watched the others with a look of interest on his face. They stood apart and talked of him among themselves, instead of rushing out at once to play, as was their wont. At last, after a good deal of wonderment and talk, one boy, bolder or more reckless than the rest, marched up to him. "I say, Velvet Jacket, how came you here?" was his salutation. "Seems to me you're too much of a gentleman for our folks." A slight flush warmed young Shaftesbury's pale cheeks, but he answered, with frankness as absolute as his courtesy was perfect, "I've been thought at home up to now. My father wants me to be with other boys of my own age, and he says a true gentleman belongs everywhere." A slight flush warmed young Shaftesbury's pale cheek, and the boys all heard what he said, and in spite of their boyish rudeness, it inspired them with a certain respect that was the beginnings of the title which they gave him among themselves, of little gentleman, only among themselves at first, till afterwards, when they grew more familiar with him, they used to address him by it more often than by his name. "And hello there, Jake, how do you do?" Hope you're well, hope you're well. Oh, and OG King, thank you for the follow. Much love to you. Alright, hold on. I'm good, I'm good. Just doing some late night reading, so. It's nearing 3 AM, so I'll probably cut off after the short story. I'm getting really sleepy. I thought maybe I'd get one more in after this, but probably not. If there had been a philosophical observer to take note of it, it would have been curious to watch how unconsciously the boys were influenced by my little gentleman, how their manners grew more gentle, how they avoided coarse or unclean or profane words in his presence. As if he had been a woman, he led his classes easily in their studies. The teacher had never to reprove him for carelessness in his duties or for broken rules his father had set. A true gentleman belongs everywhere, and he was quietly proving it. And hello, Garfi, hope you're well. Thank you for the follow. Much love to you all. And hello, him Dino. Hope you're well as well, and thank you for the follow too. The scholars liked him, they could not help it, for his manner was as courteous as his nature, was unselfish and kindly. And yet, in their feeling for him there was a little strain and envy, a slight disposition to blame him for the luxury and elegance to which he was born, and because of his very courtesy, to underrate his courage and the real manliness of his character. But there was one in whose eyes he was, from first to last, a hero. Jamie Strong was yet more delicate than young Shaftesbury, yet something the matter with one of his ankles, and could not join in the rough sports of the others. He was the only son to his mother, and she was a widow. Her husband and her other 3 children had all died of typhoid fever and been, one after another, carried out of the little, lonesome cottage at the foot of the hill, where his son seldom came, and now Jamie was the last. He should never be strong enough to do hard work, sowing, plowing, mowing, harvesting. He could never manage any of these. So for his weak limbs his quick brain must make up, and the widow strong and determined that he should be a scholar, a minister if it pleased the Lord to call him to that, if not a teacher. So she quietly strove on to keep him at school, and to earn money to provide for future years of academy and college. She sewed, she washed, she picked berries. She did anything by which she could add $1 to her hoard. Jamie understood and shared her ambition, and studied with might and main. He was used to harshness and rudeness from stronger boys, and he had grown shy and shrunk into himself. To him the coming of my little gentleman was as grace from heaven. Here was one who never mocked at his feebleness or his poverty, who was always kind, always friendly, and who did many a little thing to make him happy. Young Shaftesbury, on his part, was quick to perceive the tender and loyal admiration of the other, and there grew between them the tie of an interest which had never been put into words. And hello there, Moon Kitty Artemis, how do you do? Good day, nice to see you. It had been a damp and strange summer, intensely warm even in that hilly region. It had rained continually, but the rains, which kept the fields green and made vegetation so unusually lush and ripe, had seemed scarcely to cool at all the fur-fatigue of the air. Wiseacres predicted much sickness. Indeed, several cases of slow fever were in the town already. Hello, Fitzhugh, hope you're well. Good day to you. One day my little gentleman looked about in vain for his friend Jamie, and finally asked for him anxiously, and found that the boy was ill of typhoid fever. At the recess he heard the boys talking of it. "He'll never get well," one said. "His father died just that way, and his 3 brothers. You see, it's damp down in that hollow, and the sun hardly ever touches the house. I heard Dr. Simmons say it was 10 to 1 against anybody who was sick there." When school was over, Robert Shaftesbury hurried home. He found his mother sitting, dressed all in white, in the music room, playing a symphony on the piano, while his father sat a little distance off, listening, while with half-closed eyes he waited until the piece was over, and then he told his story and preferred his request. "Hello there, Callie. Thank you for the follow. Hope you're well. Good day to you." The doctor had said it was 10 to 1 against anyone who was sick in a little damp house in the hollow, and he wanted Jamie brought up the hill to their own home. He watched the faces of his father and mother as he spoke, and it seemed to him that a refusal was hovering upon their lips, and he said earnestly, "Don't speak just yet. Remember that he is his mother's only son as I am yours. If I lay sick where there was no hope for me, and someone else might perhaps save me by taking me in, will you think they ought to try it, or to let me die?" Mr. Shaftesbury looked into his wife's eyes. "Robert's right," she said, with the sudden sweet smile which always seemed to make the day brighter when it came to her lips. "If that poor boy can be helped by being brought here, we must bring him." "I will go and see," Mr. Shaftesbury answered at once. "And I too, Papa," said my little gentleman. "Not you, I think. I fear contagion for you. I think there is no danger for me, living on this bright hilltop, in these great, airy rooms, but even if there were, I am sure you would let me go if you knew how much Jamie loves me." "Come then," his father said quietly. He had been all his son's life preaching to him of heroism and self-sacrifice and devotion. He dared not interfere with almost his first opportunity for any real exercise of them, so the two went down the hill together. It chanced that I met Dr. Simmons coming away from the house, and proposed to him the question of the removal. It would not do, the doctor declared at once. The disease had made too much progress. To remove him now would be more dangerous than to leave him where he was. "Then I must go and see him," Robert said resolutely. "You know he has only his mother, and I must spend all the time I can spare from school with him." But I will send an excellent nurse, my son. Do you not see that I cannot have you expose yourself? Send the nurse too, please, Papa, but do not keep me from going. He will not care for the nurse, and he does not care much for me. I do not believe in the danger, and I know how glad he will be to see me. Mr. Shaftesbury hesitated. This boy was the apple of his eye. Must he indeed begin so soon to look danger in the face, for the sake of others? But dared he withhold him? When the boy felt that honour and duty called, it ended by his walking in with him quietly. 'Twas something to see how James's face had brightened. He had been very dull and stupid all day. His mother sat, and some of the time his mind had been wandering. But now a glad, eager light came into his eyes, and the smile curved his parched lips. He put out his hot hands. "Oh, is it you, my little gentleman?" he said. "I had rather see you than anything else in the world. Well then, I will come every day as soon as I am through school," Robert Shaftesbury answered. "Do you know what you've done?" his father asked, when at last they stood outside the house together. "Yes, Papa, I have promised that poor, sick, helpless little fellow all the comfort I can give him. I have promised to do by him as I should want him to do by me if I were Jamie Strong, and he was Robert Shaftesbury." Mr. Shaftesbury was silent. This indeed was the rule of living, he had thought. Should he venture to interfere with its observance? So my little gentleman had his way. He took every precaution which his mother's anxiety suggested, such as going home to lunch before he went to the little cottage where the sick boy lay and longed for him. But he went regularly, and no matter how wild Jamie might be, his presence would bring calmness. The dim eyes would kindle, the poor parched lips would smile, and Mrs. Strong said the visit did Jamie more good than his medicines. At school the boys looked upon my little gentleman with a sort of wondering reverence. They all knew of his daily visits to the fever-haunted place, which they themselves shunned, and they marvelled at his courage. This was the boy they had fancied to be lacking in manliness, because he was slight and fair, because he was carefully dressed and tenderly nurtured. They said nothing, but in 100 subtle ways they showed their changed estimate. "Hello there, Jack, how do you do? It's going well, good. Enjoying some more of the short stories in this book before I fall asleep, oh no." That's basically happening right now, so there's not much left in this story, and I think I'll end off after this. Probably in a bit, in a minute or 5. Yeah, I thought maybe I could do 3 hours, but no. My sleep schedule really induced that either. Well, I think just my body induced me being awake later on in the night. And hello, Bacaloser. Hope you're well. Good day, good day. And the days went on, and with them, Jamie Strong's life went toward its end. The doom of his house had come upon him, and love and prayers and watching were all, it seemed, of none avail, One night the fever reached its crisis, and the doctor who watched him through it knew that the end was near. Jamie knew it also. When the morning dawned, he whispered faintly to his mother, "I shall never see another morning, but oh, if I can only live till night and see my little gentleman." She proposed to send for him, but that was not what the boy wished. "Hey, Lizzie, how are you doing? Hope you're doing well. Homework went well. I think I saw you got done with work for today, right? And enjoy your stream later. I think I'll definitely be asleep when you're streaming, but enjoy. I hope you have a great stream. I usually miss them because I don't wake up early enough, but now I'll miss them, I suppose, because I don't stay up late enough. Kinda. And hello, Maddox. Well, it's just all video magic. And Jamie's mother sent for a little gentleman. But, or well, tried to, or proposed to, but that was not what Jamie wished. "No," he said feebly, "I want to see him coming in at the old time with some flowers in his hand and make a sunshine in a shady place. Somebody said that, mother. I forgot who. I forgot everything now, but that's what he does. He makes a sunshine in a shady place. A dozen times a day it seemed as if the breath coming so faintly must be his last, but he clung to life with a strange silent tenacity. At last, just a few moments before it was time for the accustomed visit, he said, "Kiss me goodbye, mother. I want to save the rest of my strength for him." And she kissed him with her bitter tears falling fast. "And I'm good, Lizzie, I'm good. Sleepy." But finishing off this story, it's not much left, but finishing this off and then going to sleep. I'm getting really, really sleepy. But Jamie put his hand so thin that you could almost see through it up and brushed her tears away. "Don't cry," he said. "It hurts me. Life here was hard and up above. Christ says it will all be made easy." Then he was silent, and presently Robert came with a great bunch of white lilies in his hand. "The lilies of heaven," murmured Jamie in a low, strange tone. Then into his eyes broke once more the light, which never failed to respond to Robert's coming, and the one smile fluttered over his lips, as a soul might flutter before it flies away. "I'm going now," he said. "I waited to say goodbye, my little gentleman. Do you think they are all gentlemen up there?" With this question his life went out, and voices we could not hear made answer. This was the beginning of Robert Shaftesbury's career. No harm came to him through his presence in the fever-tainted house, but he had learned a lesson there. The one thing for which he has striven in life is to be a gentleman, and his interpretation of that much abused phrase he finds in the book which tells us to do unto others as we would that they should do unto us. And yeah, has been a bit of a theme with this author and this bedroom stories. His idea of bedroom stories or bedtime stories His stories will have you crying to sleep. But oh well. It was a beautiful little story. But I think, and it ain't much, but I think 2 hours will have to do for today, or for now. I'll be back over the weekend. I've got some time. So, let me see. The lovely gentle fox ASMR is live I saw earlier. And a lovely Dill just went live, but I haven't seen Gentle Fox much since his normal streaming times are always when I'm asleep, unfortunately. So, I'll rate you all on over there. Let me hope you all enjoyed this little late night stream that I did. Twas fun, twas nice having you. And take care all, and hope you all enjoy a lovely Gentle Fox's ASMR as well. He does some lovely reading from George Orwell's Animal Farm. It says part 2. George Orwell is a great writer, so the material should be good at least. And hope you all enjoy his lovely soft voice. Take care all, sleep so well, and see you all some other time. Take care, good night, for me at least.